Welcome to the Mindfully Gay podcast, where queer conversations meet mindfulness, authenticity, and connection. I'm Jerry Buie.
And I'm John Cottrell. Today we're sitting down with men's performance coach Shay Doran to talk about something that affects more gay men than most are willing to admit: sexual performance anxiety.
From erection and climax challenges to cultural pressures and body shame, Shay helps us understand what's really going on beneath the surface.
We'll explore how stress, mindset, and emotional safety shape our intimate experiences, and how learning to communicate and breathe through anxiety can change everything.
So wherever you're listening from, settle in, take a breath, and join us from this open and healing conversation. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you're sitting. This is Jerry Buie and
John Cottrell.
And we're here with the Mindfully Gay podcast. We've been doing this podcast a little bit over a year now, and we do retreats and workshops and gatherings, all to support community and connection amongst gay men, having critical conversations that we don't normally have at the club.
Exactly, right.
And this morning, all the way from Brazil, but originally from the UK, we have Shay Doran. How are you doing this morning? Or this afternoon, Shay?
Yeah, this afternoon. I'm very good. I'm very happy to be here with you guys. Thank you.
So it's 9 a.m. here in Salt Lake City, and it's lunchtime for you.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm starting to get hungry.
So Shay contacted
conversation first.
Yeah. Shay contacted us a couple of months ago, actually, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and his specialty. But this is a conversation that John and I have had frequently, but love the idea that somebody else is willing to kind of step into the conversation with us about these topics. So Shay, would you like to give us a little introduction about yourself and what you're doing currently?
Sure. So if you're listening, you're wondering, what is the topic? What if I can't get hard? Or what if we lose our erections and performance anxiety? So this is we're with a big topic today. It happens to many of us guys, probably all of us guys at some point in our life, to be honest. But for some of us, it happens more frequently than we want it to. It can feel totally embarrassing, can feel very awkward to talk about. It can feel difficult to know what to do, where to go. We want to be able to get it sorted for ourselves. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. And so that's what I do. I specialize in helping men fix performance anxiety and erection problems after experiencing it for many years for myself.
And you're a personal coach on this topic, correct?
Exactly. Yep. So I work with men, and specific to this topic, this is the topic this is where my expertise are.
Okay, well, let's jump into the topic.
Let's jump into the First of all, I just think this is a wonderful topic to be talking about because, like you said, Shay, guys are not talking about this because they feel embarrassed or, just embarrassed with, capital E, where maybe ashamed, disappointed, or whatever the case may be, or, self-doubt, all those things that men tend to experience with situations like this. And it probably just gets deeper and more profound because they're not talking about it. But if we normalize it and begin to talk about it, maybe, there can be some more healthy conversations and certainly a healthy relationship with you and with your penis, right? In regards to functionality and sexuality, etc. So are those some of the things that come up in your coaching sessions?
Yeah, so I think if you're listening to this and you're experiencing or have experienced performance anxiety or erection challenges, just stick around with us because I think we're going to get into this topic. I'm certainly happy to share my personal experiences as well, and I won't force you guys to share that if challenges have happened, but you're welcome to, because like you said, John, I think the more that we can just be honest and talk about it, the more it becomes less of a taboo, right? It feels less awkward. But yes,
Right.
it comes up a lot. You're right. We feel highly vulnerable. Unfortunately, for most of us, adult content is our reference point for what we see as the standard or how things should be. Rock solid all the time. And obviously, it's a movie, so to speak. It's not real life, so very different from real life intimacy. We don't see the things that actually show up in real life intimacy. It's not the same level of vulnerability when we're watching it behind a screen. Everything's very safe. Um, and things can change when we're with somebody in real life. So today, I hope we can really get into some of the things like what causes this, why it happens, what goes on in our mind, the questions that we ask ourselves, so that for the people listening, it can just feel like they're not broken. This is I think the main point I'd love to get across today is that if we're experiencing this, we're not broken, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's interesting as a therapist working with a lot of gay men, and often this topic comes up. It's interesting. I can almost immediately kind of hear the mindset that's keeping them locked into like if I'm not performing in the way that I think I should,
Yeah.
I kind of conclude that my sex life is over, or I shut down sexually, or I start isolated in that respect, or I only see my sexuality as a singular kind of activity that doesn't require a hard on. I'm curious, what are some of the observations you've made or witnessed as people have come and talked to you about this issue?
Mhm. Yeah, they definitely feel very relatable. I think the questions is probably where it starts for many of us. What if questions, I call them. So what if I'm not able to get hard again, or what if I climax too soon or not able to climax? When we talk about performance anxiety, it usually encompasses those three things: either erection challenges, climax challenges, and sometimes all of them can be happening at the same time. But yes, so the what if questions: what if I can't satisfy my partner? What if they leave me because of this? What if I have to give up on sex and intimacy? What if this is just how it is now? These, and they keep us stuck, right? These questions, they're not yes or no answers. We can't answer any of these questions. What if I'm broken? What if I can't satisfy my partner? They keep us in this weird space of feeling bad at ourselves and just adding pressure and stress.
How do you help people navigate that?
Okay. Uh, right. Let me think how to summarize this. So I think first of all, the very first thing is having the conversation, feeling brave enough to have the conversation, because that in itself can feel like a weight lifted off of our shoulders. So for many men that I speak with, it can be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and sometimes even more that this has been going on and we've never spoken to anybody about it because we feel so ashamed and we feel so alone. So I think that in terms of navigating it as the very first step is taking a breath and okay, what I've been trying in my life so far, whether it's pills, creams, whatever, these instant fixes that have never really actually got the long-term results, um, admitting and saying to myself, okay, what I've been trying hasn't been working, and I think I need to speak to somebody else about this to get some guidance. So I think that's the very first step. And we do this very well in other parts of our life, right? So if we want to learn how to swim or how to ride a bike or get a promotion in a job, we seek advice from someone who's been there and done that, and they help guide us on how to.
Mm.
But for this area of intimacy, we do not want to talk to anybody. We expect ourselves to have it all figured out. And why? What? How can we expect ourselves to have it all figured out, to have all of the answers? So I know I haven't answered the full end to end of how I work through it with guys, but I think we'll get into that as we're going through the sections.
Well, and it's interesting culturally what's laid out, right? This shame paradigm doesn't come without its cultural underpinnings. For instance, you can now go online and talk to a doctor almost anonymously and get erectile dysfunction medications.
Yeah.
Therefore, you don't have to go talk to your doctor. You don't have to talk to somebody that you know. You can talk to a complete stranger who will put these chemicals in your body. Um, like you said, the narrative in porn does not necessarily, would suggest that we start with erection and end with an orgasm and erection, and it doesn't allow for a lot of variety of how human bodies operate and interact and come and go. No pun intended. Um, right. And so it's interesting that um, and then, of course, talking about sex in general, especially like here in Utah, we just don't talk about sex.
Right.
Gay sex is just really naughty. So that, so it's very hard to even
Mhm.
find providers, mental health or medically, that that a client feels like they can walk in and have the conversation. Um, and so I do think there's a lot of particular challenges. I think this dialogue hopefully will open some doors where people might just consider their own particular nuances.
I'm curious, and we've kind of touched on this in other areas, other topics, but I'm always struck with, what are the origins of why men don't talk about this kind of thing? Like you said, we may go to friends and colleagues about, advice about getting a promotion at work, but when it regards to, sexuality and our penile functioning, why can't we talk about that? What are those obstacles? What prevents us from talking about it? And where did that come from?
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I will say I'm not an expert on the origins of the human species, but I think we could apply like a practical or a logical lens to it in terms of where it comes from. And I think a huge part of it is um, our drive for procreation, right? So if we think about that and why it would feel shameful to talk about something not going to plan in for that part of our body, because let's say our ancestor brain is interpreting that as, what if the other person thinks that I'm not able to perform, and then they will choose somebody else instead, and then that means I'm alone and I'm not loved, and I'm not successful as a human being. I think that would, I'm not saying that's the only thing, but I think that would be probably quite a core part of the internal driver. But as Jerry said, there's then these cultural layers that we can apply on top of it: religious shame, shame from just the gay shame.
Toxic
There's
masculinity,
masculinity. Exactly. There's
right?
so many layers.
I mean, there's a toxic notion that men are all powerful, in control. You
Yep.
know, even the language we use in the queer community, right? Top, uh,
Yeah.
dom, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
interesting language that locks us into a particular mentality that says my performance is critical to how you see me.
Mm.
Right. And so when something's not going right in that part of our life, it challenges us at our very core identity of who we believe we are as a man, as a partner, as someone to be wanted in the world. And it feels like we don't dare to talk about it because that rocks the boats at such a fundamental level.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it really taps into, just our function and what our proposed, or I guess, yeah, proposed function in society. Again, going back to kind of ancestral times too. If we aren't able to procreate, then our lineage could die out.
Right.
Right. And if I'm not able to stand up and be that man and be able to create offspring, then I really don't have, I lose a large function in my culture, in
Yeah.
my community. And I
Yeah.
just feel like that thin thread still is present even today, right?
Yeah.
Where if I can't function as a man, then there's a big step down in regards to how I'm perceived, or yeah, perceived in
Right.
society.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, we feel like we lose a sense of power or status. And so, therefore, even that, many things in life are about power and status. And even that, we wouldn't want to talk about it because it feels like we're then accepting
Hmm.
that we're this lower status, so to speak. But at the same time, then when we don't talk about it, as we've said, that's when we stay stuck. And that's when things, stay the same at best, usually get worse over time.
And not to yuck anyone's yum, borrowing a phrase from one of our friends. um, I think hookup culture feeds into this too, right? Grinder, Scruff, and some of the other apps are really tools of objectification, right? So we're looking for something in particular. Hooking up with someone doesn't necessarily facilitate conversations about human sexuality, right? And so it's interesting. I was talking to a client the other day who went to this party, and the party had its sexual component to it. And I guess somehow they had secured, I don't know the medication, but it's injections that you put in your penis. So everyone had an erection.
Hmm.
It was almost there was this peer pressure to be performative in that
Wow.
level.
Wow.
And I think, wow, what are we communicating to each other
Yeah.
that
Mm.
says our performance becomes paramount to our ability to be successful in sexual and social engagement like this?
Yes. Yeah, and this is honestly what you just said there was what led me to the work that I'm doing now. So for many years, basically from the age that I could download an open grinder on my phone, I just developed a really bad uh, relationship with sex and intimacy. And the hookups for me then over time became worse, put myself in some very risky situations. And the sex really became about validation. I had no idea that any of that was going on. I just thought this is normal. This is what we do as guys. And then at the same time, my relationship with porn was really intensifying as well. It had ended relationships as a result of that. Things were really, and in terms of identity and self-esteem, was through the floor. But on the surface, I had my shit together. I had a good job, a nice house, a good car, these kind of things. But I had no idea that this relationship that I'd formed with sex and intimacy was really causing so much destruction in my life. And so, where you talk about the hookup apps here in the cultures, yeah, this is a huge challenge because there's the part of us that believes this is how we should be, like this is how I should be able to go and have sex with anybody. I should be able to perform in whatever the circumstances are. But this is very materialistic. For I'm not judging that because I've been there. But I have also now learned that, oh, this actually doesn't turn me on personally. I'm not, no problem, but it's now I value understanding what the connection, what it means to connect with somebody, what it means to get to know someone. Yes, there can be an instant physical attraction there, of course. There can be times where we feel horny as soon as we meet somebody because there's this chemistry, but it's not I should be able to perform in any situation, even when my body is telling me, I don't like this, I don't want this, and we're trying to force ourselves into it. This is when we're likely to start losing erections
Mm.
or things to not go to plan.
I know you've suggested, do you want to just go ahead and tell us your story or?
Mm. Okay. Yeah, so I think that was the main like bulk, the first part of it, many, many, many years of that happening, hookups, bad relationship with hookups, porn that intensified over the years. As I said, I'd had a long-term relationship that ended really as a result of this divide in alignment and sex. I looked outside of the relationship for that, and it was basically building bricks in between the relationship. And in 2018, that was a life-changing year for me. So my father passed away, and it made me, when we go through these significant life events, things get reorganized, right? We it was a real big slap around the face of a wake up call of me looking at my life and reevaluating. So up to that point, I'd had about 10 or 12 years of a career in banking, and it was a very successful career. And I decided I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit that and put a backpack on and take a 1 year out and travel around the world. And that gave me the space to process what had happened with my father, but also to look at myself and to, with some distance and time, rather than just being caught up in the constant hamster wheel, and to evaluate and to, for the first time ever, to see, to let feelings come to the surface of frustration, feelings of anger, feelings of why can't I get this right? Why am I not good enough? And those feelings had never come to the surface before. And that then eventually led me into self-development work, which led to having a coach. And so it was almost like a chain impact of then realizing, I knew that I didn't want to go back into banking and back into that lifestyle. I wanted to have my own business, but I tried multiple things and they weren't working. And I had a lot of frustration around this. And remember I had a 1 year coaching package with a Tony Robbins coach. And then it wasn't until month 11 that I said anything about what was going on with sex, because I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to talk about it. Erection challenges were a regular thing for me. Performance anxiety was a regular thing for me. But I just didn't want to tell anybody. And then I remember I just said to them the words like, I feel angry and I don't know why. And they took me through an exercise that basically then in this almost in an instant allowed me to see how much of this frustration was coming from this area of sex. And I knew in that moment that, okay, this is my mission. Like, I want to get this sorted for myself and then help other men to do the same. But yeah, so I came to this point through a lot of pain, many years of things not going to plan, questioning myself. Like, I always saw myself as a very confident guy, and then I realized that my self-esteem was really through the floor, and I had no idea about that because, as we spoke about, these challenges hit us at our core of who we believe we are. And the rest of it was basically just surface level of who I was trying to maintain myself to be. I should be able to have hookups. It's normal for me to watch porn, to try and keep things together, basically.
As those questions were coming up for you, like you said, you went on this backpacking trip, get away, kind of taking a step back. And, I always feel like that can be one part of that process of, trying to figure things out and kind of get your life, on track and finding new direction and things like that. Sounds like that happened for you. And in that, those feelings, those questions were starting to arise. And then it sounds like that led you to, working with a coach. So I'm wondering now, how did you start addressing those questions? Because I'm sure guys out there listening can certainly, relate to this, like having those questions of, I'm not, I don't feel fulfilled. I'm not happy. I'm angry all the time. I'm in all these things. What would you say are some of those bridges that you were able to create with the help of that coach to start maybe answering some of those questions or addressing some of those feelings that you were having?
I think one of the most fundamental things was accepting within myself that this area of sex and intimacy didn't feel good in my life. I think that was a huge shift for me because I'd never looked at it in that way before. And I'd never almost like traced to the root of these feelings that are coming up. Where are they coming from?
Mhm.
And I think if for the people listening, if this is resonating so far and just knowing that you're doing the same, a similar thing of what is responsible for the 80% of what's the 20% that's responsible for 80% of these feelings, right? It may be that there's the relationship as part of it or business stress or whatever it may be, but what's it culminating in? And if it is challenges in the bedroom, which I believe if you're listening to this, then most likely there's something that you want to sort in that area. That's a huge first step, even realizing, okay, this is something that is having a disproportional impact in my life, because it's so fundamental to who we are as human beings. So it spills over into many different areas of our life. So I think to answer the question, yeah, that would be the first step of this area is something that I want to work on, that I want to improve.
Mm.
And then the second step would be knowing that I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. And that having a conversation with somebody, you know, whether it's a coach, therapist, whoever, who has ideally been through this themselves and understands it, or has helped many men to navigate it, that I would say would then be the second step. You know, number one, saying to ourselves, okay, this is causing a lot of challenges for me. Number two, I want to have a conversation with somebody about it.
Right, right. I mean, because it really seems like being able to say that either to yourself or even out loud, and even certainly to another person, begins to normalize it,
Mm-hmm.
instead of kind of always being, shoved in the background, or I'll deal with that later, or I'll continue to suppress that. But once you kind of bring it out here and begin that process of working with it, processing through it, etc., there's a sense of beginning to normalize it. I'm wondering if you got that experience with your coach too, and do you provide that kind of coaching as well? Is there a sense of normalizing this situation?
You know, when I'm speaking with, it actually took me a while to feel like I could have that conversation with my coach. She was female, and I think that also felt a bit, I spoke to her about many things, but that I felt a bit more vulnerability in that area to talk to her about that. With the clients that I work with, from the very first call, I mean, we're talking about sex and erection, so we're going straight in at the deep end with like the most vulnerable parts of us. But something I will always say, whatever we talk about is between us, and I've also gone through this, so it's a safe place without any judgment or shame, to bring anything to the table that's going on. And often what I hear from guys is even just having the first conversation, 10 minutes, 15 minutes talking about this, that they leave that with a weight off of their shoulders of like, oh my God, I've actually spoken about it out loud for the first time to somebody. And that's often never happened before.
Right, right.
I know as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about my own journey and conversations I've had with lots of men
Mm,
um, of various ages, right? But one thing I like to encourage people to do, and I think it's important that listeners to the podcast understand that we're not being prescriptive, we're just having a conversation, and would encourage you to talk to your own medical and mental health providers to, determine what works for you. But I think it's important that people really consider their overall physical health in these conversations. When I was in my 40s, which was a few years ago, um, I went to my doctor and said, "Hey, I need Viagra."
Mhm.
And thank goodness the doctor did not jump to that prescription. He did some medical test and come to find out I had some circumstances with my blood circulation
Mhm.
that
yeah,
just took some medication. But once I was on that medication, things were working really well.
yeah.
Um, now that I'm a little bit older than 40,
Mhm.
um, I've been consulting with another medical provider, and we've been looking at hormone and thyroid issues. And it's interesting now that I've been engaged in treatment for about 30 plus days, I'm noticing a difference. And so I
Mm,
think it's important that anyone listening to this, regardless of age, that a good conversation to start with is a medical provider. Like here in Salt Lake City, we have doctors that specialize in men's health. That's where I went. I was actually surprised that this particular doctor did blood tests that my other doctors had not considered,
Mhm.
and in doing the test, discovered a few things that with treatment have been productive. So I think that's an important first step. And
Totally agree.
yeah,
Yeah, totally agree. I think this making sure always we want to make sure that there's nothing going on from a medical perspective, right? Because that's if there is, we want to address that 100%. So going to the doctors for many guys again that I speak with, they well maybe 50-50 have gone to the doctors before, had testosterone checks or a Doppler test done where they check the if there's any leakage of the blood going out of the penis. There's a lot of variability with those tests, but this is always a really important first step. And when we're experiencing erection challenges, or some kind of sexual function challenge, it's either medical or a mindset bucket. My belief is most of the time is mindset, but we need to tick off the medical box always as the first step. So yeah, reaching out to your primary caregiver and just saying to them, I've noticed either some challenges with my maintaining my erection or getting hard, or I've noticed some challenges with my climax too soon or it's delayed. Can we come in and just do some tests, testosterone checks, blood tests, just to make sure that everything's okay? The doctor then may say, this is what I hear the most often, everything's fine, it's just in your head. In which case, we've covered the area with the medical area, and it's time for us to then go and seek the mindset. The doctor is not the right space for that, right? That's then therapist or coaching. But yes, back to your point, Jerry, it is really important that we get the medical box ticked off first of all.
yeah. I think the other distinction I want to make too is just like fingerprints we're all individually different in terms of our fingerprint. I think how we respond sexually, how we show up sexually, what arouses us, what stimulates us, how hard our erections may be, how well we maintain them, whatever, is very individualistic.
Hmm.
And I do think part of the counseling process that I've experienced is people are looking at very unrealistic expectations. For instance, I know people in the porn industry, and I've heard some of the things that they have to do to be able to maintain and to perform in a particular way. And so if we're allowing porn to be our source of sex education for gay men, right? We may be misled in the idea of what works and what we're supposed to do. And so I always try to help people kind of gather a sexual history, a little bit about historically how have things looked in your 20s, 30s, and 40s compared to today, and to kind of put that in some context versus trying to achieve some ideal that's outside of myself.
Yeah, this is really important, and it's often something that we totally overlook. And I really like that you said the word context there because the context is key. The context in which we're having sex is a really good book by Emily Nagoski, Come As You Are. The book is called Come As You Are. And one of the things she talks about in the book is the role of context. So this is absolutely something that I speak to the guys that I work with about as well. And it's looking at we already have a lot of evidence when we look back on our past sexual experiences, the ones that have gone to plan and the ones that have not gone to plan, because often what we fall into the trap of doing is just something doesn't go to plan in the moment and we think I'm broken, this has happened again, what's wrong with me, what's the problem, but we don't look at the broader set of circumstances of, is this a situation that actually turns me on? Is this somebody that I've built a connection with or have a baseline level of feeling have trust and safety with them? Or is it someone where I was just actually a bit horny, or it was just a bit of a rushed situation? There wasn't really a mutual level of desire or attraction there, or perhaps I was not really getting any feedback that they were enjoying it as we started things, or it just went straight into sex rather than any kind of build up. So I would really encourage for people listening to just think back to two or three past experiences where it did go to plan and you had a really nice time and enjoyed it. And think about what were some of the things that you enjoyed about that moment, the connection, what do you remember about your partner? What were you doing that you enjoyed? And then to do the same, but for three experiences that didn't go to plan and look at the context of that. What was going on there? How was the connection? what were you doing? And that starts to then bring up some very clear patterns, because usually it's wildly different of, oh, when I put myself in these situations, that's when things don't really tend to go to plan for me. And when I put myself in this situation, okay, it may not be every single time it's absolutely perfect, but more times yes than no, I enjoy myself. Yeah, this is really, the context is really, really important.
You know, John does these body central workshops. And one of the things he does in the workshops that I think is ingenious is he gives people 3x5 cards and says, talk about what you like. Make a list of what are the things that you like and enjoy. And what's interesting, my observation, and you can fill in the blanks, is that's a very difficult exercise for people to engage in. And I'm even thinking when I've communicated to folks and they're like, well, what are you into? It's like, I'm almost hesitant to say it. But then I think, you know, they might say, I want to hang from a chandelier. And I'm like, I just want eye contact. No.
Sexually, this is like what
Yeah,
they write on the cards, what they're into sexually. Okay.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Been your observation on that exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it mirrors what we're doing. We're having a conversation about this where people don't typically have a conversation about.
Yeah.
And so with this body sensual experience, it's actually a massage experience with a group of men, but we start things off with, kind of a talk about what's going to happen in this circumstance. But one of the exercises they do is they get the 3x5 cards, and I ask them to write down how they would like to be touched on the
Mm,
massage table. And
mm,
it spurs that question of, or that idea of, wow, no one's really asked me that before. I've never really had to verbalize that, or not even write it. I've never written this down before. And so I think it's a nice way to kind of externalize just the thoughts that kind of run around in our brains and get it out here for us to see, for you to really see, like, first to get you thinking about, well, what do I like and what do I want?
mm,
And then to be able to write it down and be specific about it. And then they also get to write down how they would prefer not to be touched. And so they use that not only as a way to identify, what they do like and to externalize some of their thoughts, but then it's also a doorway for conversation while they're on the table. Because what happens is the guy's on the table and he shares his card with the guys that are going to be massaging him so they can kind of review like, oh, he likes his ears nibbled on, or he likes his nipples tweaked, or whatever the case may be, right? And so they'll have that in mind so they can help pleasure this gentleman on the table. They can also see, oh, don't touch his feet because he's ticklish. Great. But they also have the opportunity on the table to then speak about, what they would like. Maybe they forgot to write something down, but something comes to mind, then they're invited to go ahead and say what you want, and the guys will respond to that.
oh,
And I think it's just a very, eye-opening experience for these guys because I don't it's certainly situations that they normally don't have having conversations about this.
Yeah, I think the part of this conversation, the reason I want to draw that out is I think it's very challenging for people to articulate this is what I enjoy, this is what I
yeah.
don't like. Um,
Yes.
Hookup culture doesn't necessarily facilitate that. In a lot of cases, even long-term relationships, people are hesitant to say, yeah, I really don't like that.
Mm.
Especially if it's a turn on for me, but it's not a turn on for you. I'm
Right.
just assuming what works for me works for you.
Yeah.
But I think it's that neutering of the ability to give conversation to and articulate the topic of our sensuality and the topic of our sexuality. And so
Exactly.
yeah, like I've had experiences where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not really turned on by this, but I'm afraid to say something.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or we think, oh, I should just be able to, I just need to
Suck it up.
get it over and done with, and then I can leave, You know, this kind of, we're breaking trust with our body basically. Every time that we do that, we're breaking internal trust with ourselves. And I love what you said there, John, around these cards, because, and thanks for bringing this topic up as well, Jerry, 'cause it's really important. I see this as we're bringing our erotic, the sensuality part of us back online. For many of us, especially when we're going through performance anxiety, uh, our erotic is offline. Sex feels like a test. It feels like a pass or fail. It feels like something we have to get over the finish line. And if I pass this time, then it buys me a bit more time until the next time. And you can
Mm,
see there's no erotic in that whatsoever. There's no sensuality in that.
right.
It's just it's literally a all or nothing pass or fail approach. And
Yes.
so by starting to understand and ask ourselves, oh, what do I enjoy about that experience? Where do I like to be touched? How do I like to be touched? This is all bringing the erotic online. Sex is just the physical, the mechanical act of in and out, climax, ejaculation. That's it. And often, many guys also, you know, once we get the erection challenges sorted, the question then comes up of, I want to be having more sex, just more. But we don't really actually want more of the same kind of sex that we've been having. It is a deeper kind of intimacy that we're actually looking for, a feeling of a deeper connection, a feeling of wanting to be desired, to desire someone else's mutual exchange of erotic energy. And that's where that's real intimacy with
Hmm.
depth.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like doing that exercise with the body sensual and with some of my other tantric exercises and classes that I have. Again, trying to, kind of normalize even just talking about sex, talking about sensuality, talking about that deep connection. Because, like you said, I think that's what we're really desiring. We know the sex part, that's the mechanical piece. But if we can really open the door and expand our consciousness, which is Tantra, and then we can really experience more about ourselves and more about others and all things. And if we can explore that through sensuality, then the door is really open. Some of the things I kind of put out there for the guys to really know and start to try to accept to kind of pass, to move through that performance anxiety I'll say something like the objective of this class isn't to ejaculate. You don't
Yeah.
have to come. You don't have to orgasm. You may, but that's not the goal. Um, you may or may not get an erection. That's okay too. You may be, especially like on the massage table, you're going to be stimulated all over your body. So blood is flowing throughout your entire body, not just to your dick, right?
Yeah.
And so you may not get an erection, or you may have one, or it might go away, or it goes up and down, etc. That is normal. You may go through the entire experience without an erection, but you'll be very aroused. And so I just kind of
Mm.
try to put those, thoughts into their mind. And I think that's what they really do experience on the table. It's like, wow, I was aroused, but I didn't even get an erection.
Hmm.
I think one of the premises of Mindfully Gay is this intersection of body, mind, and spirit in terms of our identity. I think our identity has been so defined around the physicality of what and who we are
Mhm.
that we have um, marginalized the emotional, spiritual, mental process. And so I think finding opportunities to nurture those other components, which is kind of what happens here, happens in conversations, right? Um, I don't necessarily have to have a deep relationship with someone, but if I feel like I can communicate with them, talk with them, have some place of vulnerability with them, I can facilitate that energetic exchange.
Yes. Yeah.
I think one thing that's kind of going through my mind in this conversation is again, I think we get so focused on the physicality and in a lot of shamanic traditions and nomadic traditions, sexuality was not only seen as a procreative process, but it's also seen as an energetic exchange, a process of healing, a process of of manifestation,
Mm.
right? That there's an energetic component. And so I think you can raise that kind of energy, which by the way doesn't require an erection. Right.
Mm.
I've had some really beautiful experiences that have been very energetically engaging that didn't necessarily require a physiological response.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can be difficult to, let's say, hear that or relate to that when we're going through not being able to get hard and we really want to. So I think there's always going to be a component of us that, enjoys getting an erection, enjoys being able to have sex in the way that we want to. And then I think beyond that, as you're saying, there's this next level of growth and depth that we can get to of realizing, oh, okay, it's not only about that. There's also so many other things that we're able to do. But I also know how it feels when things are not going to plan in the bedroom and we really want to get that sorted. Yeah. I wondered if we'd be able to talk about how performance anxiety, well, not how it shows up, why it shows up, where it usually comes from.
Yeah,
Sure.
please.
Because it feels like a good time to speak about that. So we spoke about the medical piece earlier on, right? If there's medical is the first step. Let's talk about the mindset. So what's going on in the body? Because often, as we said, the guys will think, I'm broken. Uh, I can't be fixed. Things are always going to be like this. And we think there is something wrong with our body, that our dick is broken. But biologically, all this going on is that, yes, our body's going into a stress state. And when our body goes into a stress state, 'cause it's interpreting a situation as a fight or flight situation. So in this case, it may be something as simple as we've been kissing on the sofa and now we're moving into the bedroom. Or we go to reach for a condom, or our partner goes to the bathroom and says, I'm going to be back in 2 minutes, and we're on the bed thinking, oh my God, I've got to stay hard, I've got to maintain it. If they come back out and I'm soft, then it's game over. Right? These thoughts tip our body into the stress state. When our body goes into a stress state, the blood is redirected away from the non-critical parts of our body to the critical parts, right? Our brain and our muscles, because our body is thinking that we need to prepare for a fight or to run away.
Mhm.
This is why we lose the erection, because our dick in that moment is not a critical part of our body. So the reason why I wanted to just say that first of all is because when we're thinking we're broken, something's wrong with me, you're not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. Your body is responding in the way it's meant to be responding. It's not that blood's not able to go to your dick. You were hard kissing on the sofa a few minutes ago, so clearly there's not a problem with the erection, right? You're able to get erect. It is about it's about the body going into a stress state. And for example, the work that I do with the guys is about how we stop that from happening in the area of sex and intimacy. We want that to happen in other areas of our life. If we're walking down the street and all of a sudden we're in a bit of a dangerous situation, we're not going to want to stop and, oh, look at that really hot person on the other side of the road and get hard and get aroused in that moment. We're going to want to get out of that situation. So this function in our body is really critical, and it's just we want it in some parts of our life. We don't want it in other parts of our life. So that's the like what's going on. Um, where does performance anxiety come from? This is my understanding of it. Okay, I'm not saying this is the one and only truth, but from the guys that I've worked with, this is now from my own experience and thousands of conversations on it right now, what I see come up the most often. So it's a combination of things. So often we think in our mind, oh, it's this one, but I haven't had any trauma when I was a child. Why do I have this? But it's not, we often look for like a one pinpoint, something to put it onto. And I believe it's never one thing. It's usually a combination of things. So first, there's been some kind of past experience, sexual experience that hasn't gone to plan, right? So that may be the first time that we went to have sex, things didn't really go to plan, or it may be more recently in our life. But there's some kind of sexual experience that hasn't gone to plan. Second, there's then been a tipping point, usually in other parts of our life. So it may be that things in the relationship have been a bit rocky. It may be that things at work have been difficult or high pressure, high stakes. And then childhood. So Often, many guys, I would really be interested to hear what you hear about this as well. But many guys that I speak to think, oh, this is nothing to do with when I was younger. Um, don't need to go there. Don't need to spend any time. We have some resistance to doing that, and it's not the only, the root cause for it. But I believe the seeds of performance anxiety are planted at a much younger age. These thoughts of, what if I'm not good enough? What if I can't satisfy the other person? What if they don't want me because of this? Right? Think about outside of the area of sex. When we go back and look at the areas of sports, academics, theatre, comparison to siblings, comparison to other kids, or even if it's none of that and it's just about being gay,
Mhm.
these thoughts are there. What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not wanted because of this? What if I'm not accepted because of this? What if I'm different? What if I can't have the love of the other person? So my belief is that these thoughts show up at a much younger age. It doesn't have to mean traumatic experiences. It can come from that as well, or being caught masturbating, caught exploring with somebody, and there's some shame that's then been layered on around sex. These things can happen as well. So I believe my belief is that it's a combination of different factors rather than it just being one specific thing that happened. There's usually a chain of events that have led to this.
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up because I think that's so important for people to, think about and ponder when it comes to performance anxiety, that there's a physiological component to this, and just to know, the fight or flight response and how that is a
Yeah.
way of protecting your body and in a situation that you may perceive as threatening for some reason. And so I think it's important to, because I think that's also normalizing. We do this. That's a physiological response. And so take that into account. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it is important for, just that introduction, that, opening the door, even if it's slight, to start exploring, what are some of those childhood experiences and circumstances that may contribute to that performance anxiety. And you're right, it's not always about sex. It may not even be about sex, but maybe just
Yeah.
about relationship and how you were seen, or you felt that you were seen or not seen in certain circumstances, or how you may have performed or not performed at sports, etc. Those are some underlying situations and circumstances that might show up in a sexual experience. So really important to talk about and just bring to the light.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see it as we've had these experiences when we were younger that have created some imprints in our mind. And then we go through life and the thoughts are there, but maybe they're in other parts of our life. They're not really in the sex part of our life. We have this other intensity that's layered on. So it could be the relationship's not going to plan, high pressure, high stakes situation at work or whatever. And then these thoughts have spilled over into the area of intimacy. And then we're thinking the same things about now sex. What if I can't satisfy them? What if I can't get hard? What if something's wrong with me?
So in your coaching, how do you help an individual start to, kind of work through those pieces?
Hmm. I think the first is very guided. Okay, so we spoke about how sometimes we expect ourselves to have all of the answers, and so at times we need guidance from others. So the work that I do with guys is very guided in terms of going through specific tools that allow these realizations to come through, that allow us to take a broader perspective and look at what's contributed to this. I imagine it as a putting together a puzzle piece, right? And it's our job to figure out, okay, this bit over here, this bit over here. So these may have related to it in some way, shape, or form. But the work's never really about, oh, now I found the one reason for why I had this in the first place. It is more so about how do we create a sense of safety, internal safety within our own body, so that our body's not going into a stress state, and so that we're not then experiencing erection challenges or performance anxiety in the bedroom, right? That's ultimately what the tools are achieve is the recoding of the mind from sex equals stress, sex equals a test, sex equals worry, to sex equals calm, sex equals relaxed and enjoyment. So that's the aim. That's what we go through to be able to get this sorted. So less about the oh, now I know the reason, and it's more about how do we learn to regulate our own emotions in this moment of intimacy, rather than externalizing it or not wanting to look at it and pushing it away. Because that's when it feels like we're in this internal battle of our mind wants one thing, but our body's doing another thing.
Right. Can you share a tool that you might use? I mean, I'm thinking of, because I use meditation and working with
Yeah.
and helping with regulating some of that. Is there a tool that you can share that that might resonate with our listeners?
Yeah. So this is a good question, because many of the guys that I speak with, there's Shay, I just need you to tell me what can I do in the moment to stop overthinking, and then I know that everything's going to be okay. And it's never, it's, I'm laughing about that because I've been there myself as well. Of like, I don't need much. I just need this help of like, help me stop overthinking, and then I know I'm going to be fine. We're kind of coming into that holding up a protective shield, right? There's part of us that feels very vulnerable, that doesn't really want to talk about this or open up about it. And so we think, just give me this quick tool and I know I'm going to be okay. The reality is, we know there's some stuff underneath that we need to work on that feels a bit scary. And so, yes, there are tools for in the moment, and I'm going to share a couple of them in a second. But it's also really important that we realize and take a step back of imagine a scale of 0 to 10 of sexual anxiety. Okay, so the 0 is I'm in a very calm state, everything's fine, feel good. A 10 is like off the charts, we've lost the erection, or we're avoiding intimacy because it just feels so embarrassing and awkward. When we're in the moment and we notice the thoughts start to spiral in the mind of, oh, we maybe we sneakily check or test ourselves, am I still hard? Is it as hard as it was a moment ago? Is everything still okay? No. Oh, what if I'm starting to lose it? What if they're not enjoying this? And then it's just a rabbit hole from there, right? Of the thoughts spiraling of I'm losing my erection, and then we've pushed ourselves into a stress state. So we spoke about the scale of 0 to 10. We're at an 8 or a 9, 7, 8, or 9 when those thoughts are happening in the moment. And so when we carry this belief of like, just give me the tools for how to stop overthinking in the moment, it's too late. It's already too late. Okay. And that, sorry, because that sounds like a bit shitty news, but I want to be real about this as well and just be honest. If we're just trying to fix it in the moment, it's going to always be a continuous battle of sometimes it works, other times it doesn't, but we're always feeling like we're having to push and force ourselves to get over the finish line, which is not what we want. We spoke about earlier on, that's not where we experience depth of intimacy and the erotic. It's not happening in that space. So we need to be looking at, and this is the work that I do, is when this is at a 2 or a 3 out of 10, that's what we need to be working on, where it's a much lower stakes situation, where it is, oh, later on I'm meeting my partner or somebody for intimacy, and the thought flashes into our mind, what if it doesn't go how I want it to go? That's where it's at a 2 or a 3. It's not at a 7, 8, or 9, because we're not in the moment. So that's where most of the work needs to be, for us to then not even get to the point of escalation of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But for those listening that are like, no, I still need the tool for right in the moment. You mentioned meditation. So meditation helps you just the more that we're practicing that, the more we're able to be in a calm state on a day-to-day basis. That's a positive thing. Breathe in. For those listening, you're probably going to be like, ugh, I've heard so much about this. But this is the reality of what can instantly bring our nervous system down a little bit, right? We're not saying we're going to bring it down from an 8 or a 9 to a 2 or a 3. That's not going to happen. It's maybe going to take it from a 9 to an 8 or an 8 to a 7. But the likelihood is we're still going to be experiencing performance anxiety in the moment. But something called box breathing, where you breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, doing that a few times. that's an option. It's something that we can do relatively discreetly in the moment if we're with a partner. Another thing that we can do is a technique which you may have heard of called havening, which is basically where we're slowly stroking down from the shoulders. So you can do this, you can do it with me if you want to do it. So we stroke down from the shoulders to the arms and we're just counting 1. And then we just keep doing that slowly. So you can feel as you're doing this, there's like a calming sensation because it basically takes us back to childhood where we were just soothed. And so it's a very soothing thing that can reduce the intensity. The reality, in the moment of sex, it was probably going to be a bit strange if we start doing this. But the reason why I'm saying it is we can, if our partner goes off to the bathroom or if we want to go to the bathroom, it's okay just to be there for, a few seconds. We don't need to do it any more than 10 times, but just breathing nice and slowly whilst we're doing it. That's a technique called havening that's also shown to reduce the intensity. So yes, those are the instant tools, but we can see they're surface level things. They're not the things that in themselves are going to fix the performance anxiety long term.
I really like this. I mean, just
Yeah,
instantly, I did feel that soothing,
yeah.
calm sensation come over me. That I love that. I love that.
When we were talking about this conversation, I asked for some talking points, and um, you brought up the topic why pills work sometimes and not others. So I'm
Mm.
curious what your take is on that.
Hmm. Yes, good. I like this. I like this question because
All like our pills that fix things.
yeah, because we can get ourselves into a real state with this of, oh my God, something's really wrong with me. Now the pills are not even working. I must be broken. I must be totally fucked. I'm different to everybody else. This is where our mind can go. The pills do not fix performance anxiety, right? What we often do not hear is that for the pills to work, we have to be in a calm and relaxed state, or else these pills are not going to be having any effect whatsoever, apart from probably some side effects that we can get sometimes of bad headaches or, whatever it may be, some nausea. But this is why the pills sometimes they work, at the times they don't work, or over time we see them working less and less. Can also be the brain thinking, oh, am I as hard as I was the first time that I took this? And then we start to go into a spiral around that as well. But ultimately, that's still the body going into a stress state of thoughts. And so this is why. So if you have been taking pills and they used to work, but now sometimes they work or they're not working at all, the likelihood is because this is a mindset thing that's going on. We have to be in a calm and relaxed state for the pills to work in the first place. If we're not, they're not going to work, or it's going to be 50-50.
Good point. Good tip.
Do you know, I'm going to make a confession.
Okay.
John, no.
Oh my God.
The doctor several years ago gave me like a Viagra. It wasn't Viagra, but it was like a Viagra pill. And I recently saw this new doctor. He said, "Well, what's the dosage that you're taking?" And so I told him the dosage, and he goes, "Well, that's really unusual because for this to work, it has to be at this dosage, which was like twice the amount that I was taking."
Right.
And we got to talking, and I thought, my little therapist brain thought, I feel like those pills were like a placebo effect.
Yeah.
Like I was taking them for some sense of confidence,
Yeah, exactly.
and I wasn't
Calming.
taking enough to get the physiological benefit from them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I thrown them away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is in my head. I
Right.
just think um, I think this is a much more common issue that people are willing to confide in. And and I think there is so much to the mindset and where we put our heads and what we're comparing ourselves to. And what I have
Mm.
found is if I just give myself permission, I'm here to have a good time. And I just give myself permission that however it turns out seems fair to me.
Yeah.
Um, it has been interesting to have people almost apologize Like if they don't see you responding according, right? So that kind of feeds into the dynamic too. If our partners are not on the same page with us, they could actually be feeding into the pathology by, oh, I'm sorry you didn't get an erection, or I'm sorry you didn't come, or well, okay, I had a good time, right? I think that's an important piece. So it's not this conversation in my mind is not just for the person who feels like they're not performing the way they would like to. I think it's a conversation we all need to have
Mhm.
about taking responsibility for our own pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, because often this can play a part of it as well. The partner has a strong reaction to it, or they think immediately it's defensive reaction of, "Oh, do I not turn you on anymore? Are you not attracted to me?" Or they think even internally, I must have not done something right. And energetically, we feel that distance, the void all of a sudden. It's like the elephant in the room. And that awkwardness in itself creates a sense of pressure. So I totally agree. If we're able to learn on both sides, yes, how to navigate this to get things sorted, but also for the partner to know that when this happens, it's okay, and how to navigate that for themselves as well. Yeah, totally agree. It's really important.
Yeah. Hmm.
So Shay, I think it's important that people know how to contact you
Yeah.
because you are like the sole solution to this issue for the gay community globally.
For the world. For the whole world. Uh, yeah, and I think just on that, I especially for the younger guy, I've worked with guys from 17 up to late 70s, but for younger guys especially that just have everything is through this now, instant access and a lifetime of porn. I think we're just going to be seeing this more and more. So it's really important that we're having these conversations, that people know where to go and what to do when they're experiencing this. So yes, I have a website. And we'll put this in the links in the comment section below, but shay-doran.com, and you'll be able to see on there stories from other guys as well, just to see if it feels relatable. YouTube as well, have a lot of videos that I put onto there, just talking about the thoughts that we have and the reality of performance anxiety. If you're okay with it as well, I'd like to just offer a couple of things. So there's a quiz that I will give to guys for free so that they can see, is this performance anxiety or is it something else that's going on? But also I'd like to just give a bit of a gift. I recorded recently a guided meditation that's specific for performance anxiety. So maybe I can send that to you, and then you could give
Sure.
that to
Absolutely. Yeah,
listeners
we'll
as
put
a
that
gift.
in our, we
Yeah.
record and, we film this, and so we are on YouTube. So we'll certainly put it in our YouTube description.
Okay.
Also, it's obviously an audio podcast, and we'll put all that information into our show notes.
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook,
Mhm.
TikTok.
Other places.
So you have a YouTube channel by your name?
Yes, exactly. Shay-Doran.
Okay.
That's yeah. If you search either performance anxiety or performance anxiety Shay, you'll see it. It will come up.
All right.
Right.
Social media presence at all?
Just YouTube.
Just you.
Uh, yeah, YouTube and the website. For me right now, that's I am sticking to the places where we're often searching for solutions to the issues. So that's why YouTube is usually where Google or YouTube is usually where we're looking for answers of how to get it fixed.
Very
Yeah.
true. Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us from Brazil. And you reached out to us, which was encouraging. Like someone in Brazil heard our podcast.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we want to encourage people to engage Shay if they have questions. Certainly, you can reach John and I here at mindfullygay.com. We TikTok the same name, Instagram mindfully_gay. We have a Facebook page. We just had an event. It was interesting how many people showed up. And I said, well, how'd you hear about our event? The podcast. I'm like, people are listening.
Thanks, listeners.
So I want to thank you for joining us, reaching out. Such a critical conversation. We certainly want to use you as a resource in the future. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, just thank you for, sharing your personal experience and your professional experience and what you're sharing in regards to just really healing, healing ourselves as individuals and helping us deeply connect with ourselves and others. I think that's so important. That's certainly what Mindfully Gay wants to do. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. Can I say thank you to you both as well for the podcast? No, well, thank you for the because it's I feel like today has been a very wholesome conversation where we've covered it from many angles, not just about erections, but about the medical front, the mindset front, and the mind, body, spirit, as you said.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what this conversation has represented today, and so yeah, it's felt really good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Great. So, to our listeners, we look forward to chatting with you in the future. Please contact us on the website and stay tuned for our events and upcoming opportunities to create community and connections.
We hope today's conversation with Shay Doran gave you something meaningful to reflect on, whether that's more compassion for yourself or a new way to approach intimacy.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the Mindfully Gay podcast so others in our community can find and benefit from it.
And we'd love to hear your stories. Connect with us on Instagram at mindfully_gay or visit mindfullygay.com to see what's coming up next, including our free social events and retreats.
Thanks for listening, friends. Be kind to yourself. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.